Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, I'm just like I like to be. Full of chicken wings and looking at a couch of shame that I don't have to sleep on tonight. Tony, how are you?
I thought you were going to say, I'm just like I like to be. I'm in Bloomington. No?
No.
But we are in Bloomington. We're in a lovely hotel room in Bloomington. Me, myself, Tom,
When you say me, you point at yourself. That's how
us,
that works.
the we, and then, of course, Kevin Noon behind the camera. And yes, we are here in Bloomington. About, 12 hours, 11 hours till kickoff. 11 and a half hours. No.
20?
23 and a
3
half
hours? Yeah.
It's early morning kick, Pac-12, they do that here in Indiana. Looking forward to it. Tom, I know you're getting a little worried about the weather. So what's the latest on the weather for the people?
Well, the weather, we just checked it when we left. On the Apple Weather app, it was just cloud, no rain, just cloud. So it was like, good, I can leave my shower curtain at home. And then we get here, and the hour by hour looks like it's like 30% chance of rain around kickoff time and like 40% or so throughout much of the game. And then once you get towards like 11 o'clock, it's more like 50%, which, if you want to feel good about that, that means it's like 50-50 or better that it won't rain at all. But if you want to feel not that great about it, it reminds me exactly of what the forecast for the Minnesota game looked like the night before the Minnesota game. And then it rained for like most of that game, sometimes kind of hard. So I think I just need to pack rain gear for all of these trips now, because the weather app is just full of lies.
Well, that's your Apple products. My Samsung product said it's chance of rain. It said it yesterday. It said it today. Thank you, Samsung. I do wonder if that shower curtain in the bathroom in our hotel room is it double lined? Is there like two things that could be used?
Why do you need one? Do you need a shower curtain?
I'm just saying if it's a long walk back. I don't know how far away we're parking. It was a long walk back from Minnesota. You graciously shared one of your two shower curtains, and you know what? It's a touching moment. I've never had to walk from a place to another place wearing a shower curtain, but it was raining significantly hard that night. I'm glad that I got the opportunity, because now I can say I've done it. People all around the world are like, I hope one day I can walk to my car wearing a shower curtain, and I've done that.
So anyway, welcome to our podcast, Tony Gerdeman and the Saddest Bucket List.
Yeah, that one was right up there. And, because I've mentioned this before, and we're already off the rails. I as a child, I saw a man crossing the Maumee River Bridge in Napoleon, Ohio, where I grew up, wearing nothing but a shower curtain. And I couldn't have been 3 or 4 years old. And I was thinking, one day. Also, in that same town, I remember seeing the people working at the gas station with wad. If one day I can just cross a bridge in a shower curtain. Anyway, we are here in Indiana for a big game. This was supposed to be the most difficult game on the schedule for the Buckeyes. I think when we did our rankings, it was like, well, Indiana's probably the second best team, perhaps in the Big Ten East, and Penn State comes to Columbus, so this would make this game a little bit tougher. Now Ohio State is a 21-point favorite, not at all the game we expected, but kind of the game we always get.
It does have a little bit of the last time we were on the road was at Rutgers, and we spent the whole time going, this is not going to be a normal Ohio State-Rutgers game. And then we got like the most normal Ohio State-Rutgers game. This one feels like you look at Indiana's offense, and it's like, how many points is Ohio State going to have to score in order to cover the 21-point spread? Is it 21, or is it maybe 24? And I realize I picked Indiana to score 14 points. So, but, draw me up the scenario where Indiana puts up a 30-burger tomorrow.
That's a really good way of putting it, because like 17 is, maybe 21 is the most, but I see, what is the lowest total you see from Ohio State? Is it 34, 38, like maybe 34 for me?
Yeah,
like a couple of field
31,
goals?
31, but I mean, 31-10 would, at least push. So,
and we know Indiana has scored one offensive touchdown in Big Ten play this year. If they score two against Ohio State, do we think about, is it time, start a campaign, fire Matt Barnes?
bring someone in. I mean, I don't know.
Whose turn to be defensive coordinator now?
The eternal question. Yeah, I don't think you can possibly, barring a ton of short fields, like, turnovers, something like that for Ohio State, I don't know how Indiana is putting up more than 10, 14 points. I really don't see it, because you look at their numbers, and the numbers are like bleak. I think they've hit more than 4 yards per carry once this season against Power 5 opposition. I think they've been over 6 yards per pass. I can actually pull this up. I actually have the website up here because I'm prepared, and then I didn't actually look at it.
Tom.
But they have just been like dreadful every single game, and it's just like they can't run, they can't pass, they turn the ball over a lot. But I mean, other than that, other than the not running, not passing, and the constant turnovers, they've been pretty solid this year.
Is there a third thing you can do on offense? Like, you can throw the ball really high in the air.
It's going to be a game of 500. As long as it's a game of 500, although, Michael Penix is probably the quarterback with the strongest arm, and he's not playing probably, so...
Yeah, it's a mess, and they've got the freshman that they bring in to run the ball when Jack Tuttle is playing, and so they'll do some of that. We'll see if that kid throws the ball at all. He hasn't thrown it yet this year. But you bring in Jack Tuttle, and there's no big plays in this offense anywhere. There's going to be a lot of 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 5, and that's not where Indiana's going to want to be, but I think it's going to be where they are an awful lot. And when they run the ball on first down and you get 1 yard, then it's 2nd and 9, you throw an incompletion. Now you're playing right into Ohio State's hands, and they don't even need to be aggressive at that point. At that point, they can just drop 7, let the pass rush do what it does, and then tackle the guy before he gets to the first down line.
Right. If Indiana is rushing for less than 4 yards per carry, that means like you don't need to load up to stop the run. Like you just, and the big plays haven't been there in the passing game either. They're completing basically both of their quarterbacks, Penix and Tuttle, are right around 50% completions. None of their receivers are putting up, big numbers in the average reception. Ty Freifogel 10.2, Peyton Hendershot 12.8. I mean, it's just needed.
And anything they do, it's...
The most bad. There, you're wrong.
Exactly. Very few threats, and there's no consistency. So it will take turnovers. It will take special teams. It's going to be the Ohio State plan to win, which is field position. If Indiana is starting from the 20 or the 25 all game long, all night long, they made there's two touchdown drives at most if they have to go the length of the field against this defense with this offense, and it's going to take some missed tackles. There's going to have to be at least a 40-yard play or something like that to just pick up a big chunk, grab a little bit of momentum, use the crowd. Ohio State defense is back on its feet a little, and then because we see that almost every game at some point. The home team goes and drives, and maybe it's the first drive of the game, and then there's another one later on. You've got the script, the 15-player, however many play script. You've been practicing it. You've been working it. You do some stuff that Ohio State isn't expecting in that first drive, and you go and score. And then you don't score again until like the end of the third quarter.
Yeah, and you could definitely see that. Like if Indiana drives down the field and gets points on that first drive, keep the panic button holstered. It may be a little early. You just, to your point, if they're not getting good field position to start with, and then you start on the 25. Just say you're starting on the 25 every drive, and you're picking up 7 yards, and then you're punching it away. That's a lot of Ohio State drives that are starting on the Ohio State 40-yard line, and Ohio State has the option of running and driving the ball consistently or hitting a big play. And it's not going to be quite as easy as it was against Rutgers or Maryland. This is a better defense than Ohio State's seen in the last couple weeks, but there are injury questions there as well. I mean, we talked about Penix being out, but Tom Allen earlier the week said Tywan Mullen and Reese Taylor were like working some, but they didn't know for sure if they were going to be able to play. And, a lot of times that to me means probably not going to play. Like working some is like, well, they're doing some light jogging but, probably in non-contact jerseys. I'm sure they would love to get them back. If you don't have your top two corners against Ohio State, no bueno.
And even if you have them and they're only 85%, they may be better than the backups, but good luck against Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson and Jackson Smith and Jigba and anybody else you want to throw out there. They're going to have issues there. I'm looking at even if they drive down the field, that's the script and that's executing the plays that you practice. But then you get into the red zone. What does Indiana do in the red zone when the 12th defender of the back of the end zone is there and now the windows are tighter. Now it really comes down to executing rather than we've just practiced these plays. We know what we're doing. We like these. And these plays Jack Tuttle likes. Now everything is more concentrated, more condensed. And that's when a 7-play, 80-yard drive bogs down and becomes a 10-play, 82-yard drive that ends in a field goal. And it's like, yeah.
Yeah, and that was one of my bold predictions this week was Indiana does not score a touchdown in the red zone. And that's one of the reasons why. If Indiana's going to score, you need to have like one of those missed tackle kind of plays that pops into a, you get the 7-yard pass that turns into a 40-yard touchdown. They hit that. They worked that last year some against Ohio State, but you go back to watch that game and it's like, well, there's a lot of Marcus Hooker involved in a lot of that stuff. And the back of that defense has changed significantly over the last year and has changed for the better. There's a reason that Marcus Hooker was a starter last year and now is like is he third team this year? We talk a lot about the safety rotation and all the different pieces they're moving around. That's a name you haven't heard. It feels like they've sort of figured something out with Hickman and Lathan Ransom, Bryson Shaw, and Marcus Williams and Cam Martinez, like in those three safety spots. It feels like they've sort of figured some stuff out, and you're not seeing the big plays. And we kind of caveat all of our conversations about like Rutgers. They didn't give up any big plays against Rutgers. It's like, well, Rutgers doesn't have any playmakers. Like, well, look at the average yards per play or the long yards per for receptions and for runs here. It's like, I don't know that Indiana has the playmakers to take advantage of that either.
No, and what this Ohio State defense is now able to do is trust each other. They're not, one guy's not worried about the other guy making a mistake, and now I've got to kind of shade over his way and cover two spots. You're only focused on, as Luke Fickell always used to say, you're 111th. And that's all they need to worry about now because they trust each other. They've seen the results. They are in positions where they're all more comfortable, more confident, and there's less worry about each other. And if you're not worried about the other person, you can go do your job to your ability. And right now, all of the guys that are in these spots have the ability to do them, at least to this point. I'm still waiting to see some like playmaking from Lathan Ransom, but if he's just nothing gets if there are no big plays, it's kind of like if there are no holding calls on the offensive line or whatever. If you don't hear about them, just assume that everything is okay, and that's kind of where I am with Lathan Ransom. I think he's not Jordan Fuller. We're not saying that, but there was a lot of after Jordan Fuller replaces Malik Hooker, where are the big plays? And it's like you don't see big plays either for him or the receivers, because he's wiping them out. So as long as the defense isn't giving up big plays, I think everything is working.
Well, when your offense can make big plays, you don't need your defense to be turning the ball over constantly. Like 4 games in a row with a pick six, like that's great. Like Ryan Day is not going to turn that down, but they don't need that to succeed. They can, this is not a Jim Tressel team where you have to have Chris Gamble return a pick six or you're losing to Penn State in 2002. This team's going to score minimally 30 points, I would say, pretty much every game from here on out, and probably pushing 40 in a lot of them. You don't have to have a defense that, gets you on the scoreboard. You have to have a defense that just makes it a little harder on the opponent's offense. You go back to, talking about safety play. Safeties to me are a little bit like long snappers, where it's like, if you don't notice the long snapper, like, that's great. Like, you haven't really seen, like, Bradley Robinson. The only time you've thought about Bradley Robinson all year is when Bradley Robinson is the first one down and downing a punt. That means Bradley Robinson's a good long snapper because you're not thinking about him, you're not hearing about him. It's just like he's just doing his job. And excellence and anonymity. That's a little bit what that deep safety spot is for Ohio State now, which is You don't need to be Malik Hooker and have 3 pick sixes in a season. You just need to not be Isaiah Pryor. You need to not be Marcus Hooker, not be the guy who you see the back of his jersey chasing some dude 50 yards down the field. Like, that's all you really have to be with as good as the Ohio State offense can be.
Yeah, just thinking of the bad safety play over the years, and they're just throwing stuff out there. Let's maybe Jocelyn Witt, maybe this, maybe that, and there are a lot fewer maybes on this team, and I think you're seeing the results for the Ohio State defense. Let's talk about the Ohio State offense, Tom, because Indiana's defense is where they're supposed to make their money. That's also where Ohio State's off. That's where Ohio State makes their money is with that offense. And C.J. Stroud, 5 touchdown passes and 0 interceptions in his last 2 games. If you've got a couple of banged up corners, it sure seems like if there were going to be an Ohio State quarterback who had ever thrown 5 touchdowns and 0 interceptions in 3 straight games, it would look like this. It would be this. Except, Tom, kind of get the feeling it's been a while since he's had an interception, and when I say a while, it's 2 games. He had 3 in his first 3, one in each of his first 3. Kind of feels like he's due, and I'm sorry I am saying that, but it just feels like it's been enough time, and maybe there's a popped pass, a tipped pass, something like that. If I had gone with that as a bold prediction, would you have accepted it?
That there would be 1 interception?
An interception of some sort?
Probably not. That's not. I don't think that's
So
particularly.
you
bold.
think it's going to happen?
I don't think it's particularly bold.
You're calling for it.
Well, I think that here's the thing. Here's what Indiana does on defense, and we've talked about that. We talked about this with Ryan Day a little bit earlier in the week. It's you have the everyone has their signature move, and Indiana's move is bring lots of blitzes from lots of different angles, and just you're not bringing 8 guys, but you're bringing blitzes from areas where you don't always see blitzes, and you're setting up to potentially A, confuse the quarterback, B, hit the quarterback, but at least A, confuse the quarterback, have one of your defensive linemen drop, have linebackers show pressure, drop, corners show pressure, drop. You're going to have a situation where it's set up, the defense is designed to just confuse the heck out of the quarterback, and they do things in ways that C.J. Stroud has not seen yet on the field. So it's not unreasonable to me to think that he might have an interception. You just, you have one situation where you get your eyes are telling you one thing pre-snap, and then post-snap it's something very different. And hey, I think there's a crosser there that I can hit, and this guy who looked like he was coming is now dropping back into the passing lane, and it gets tipped or it gets intercepted. I would not be at all surprised if there was an interception tomorrow, just based on Indiana showing him something, changing to something else, and that confusion just leading to a mistake. I don't expect. What did Justin Fields have last year? 3 interceptions. I don't expect 3 interceptions, but I would not be surprised if we had an interception. Plus, you got a little rain, you got probably a little wind. There's a bunch of stuff that this is not going to be ideal circumstances for him.
Yeah, and we talked about that game last year in one of the earlier shows this week. Opens up with that touchdown pass to Garrett Wilson, tries to go right back to it, and it was there, but he just took a little bit too long. Last year he was 18 of 30 for 300 yards with 2 touchdowns and those 3 interceptions. And so if C.J. Stroud does, throw an interception, it's not the end of the world. Ohio State quarterbacks have done it before. But do they even need to throw it, Tom? They've got Trayvon Henderson, who is going to get the ball a lot in this game, it feels like, because now it is time. It is the second half of the season. It is almost November. November is for contenders. If you're going to contend, let's see some more from Trayvon Henderson. I think the time of protecting him is over, and maybe that's because but you need to get the blood flowing, the juices flowing, and at some point apologize for running him in the fourth quarter when you're up 42-7, or it's like, you know what, we've got to play our guys. Like they're on scholarship. He's a wasted scholarship at this point.
Well, and how much depth you have at running back, really? I mean, we'll find out tomorrow when the availability report comes out, but obviously there have been some reports that they may not have a full complement of running backs this week. And here's the other thing that we haven't talked about yet. Is Ryan Day all that worried about Tom Allen's feelings? Like, I know Tom Allen is all about loving each other. I'm not sure that there's a ton of love there after Indiana tried to play lawyer ball to get into the Big Ten championship game last year, and you heard over and over, well, Ohio State didn't beat Indiana convincingly. Well, Ohio State just barely beat Indiana. I mean, boy, they almost lost to Indiana. Like, if Ohio State's up 35-7, as they were last year, I think you could very easily have Ryan Day make the case like, well, we've seen them come back from this deficit before. We had to keep the pedal down because we wanted to make sure this is beating the ever-living crap out of you is really a sign of respect if you think about it.
That's very good. You must be you're very talented with that. You don't have to apologize because you've seen what happens. So you just keep attacking. Whatever happens. And you know what? Love each other enough to stop the ball. That's all. Yeah, because you go back to, remember the last time Ryan Day got to play a coach that he was unhappy with. And that would have been
2 weeks ago. And then 2 years ago with the same coach?
No, that's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah. And then I don't know that there was any love lost this year either. But, 2 years ago, the Maryland game, that was the one where Ohio State's up by, 14-0 or whatever it is, early in the game. And then you have the Chris Olave onside kick, the greatest onside kick in the history of the sport of football. And then they just kind of just kept scoring. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, it was 70-something points. How about that? And then this year, well, hey, it was 66-something points. Like, oh, boy. How'd that happen again? Like it is. Ryan Day has at times in the past, made indirect reference to wanting to put large point totals up against teams that have, displeased him in some way or another, and that has not really been a thing that's been talked about this week. But Ryan Day has talked about the fact that we know we have to finish. Well, finishing might look like Trayvon Henderson in the fourth quarter, but you got Indiana or Penn State on deck, so you don't want to do too much there.
Finishing might look like Mortal Kombat. Mm-hmm. You grab somebody through the neck and pull out their spinal column. This is. There's going to be a message. I'm sure there has been some message this week of don't let up, finish, that whole stuff, that whole thing. And if you guys got some questions, go ahead and I'm sure you've been throwing them in there. So continue to do that. Questions about the game, the Buckeyes, the Hoosiers, we'll get to them. Anything else, Tom, with this Ohio State offense or defense that you want to
Well, I was just pulling up the stats on Indiana and what they've done in terms of sacks this year. They have given up more sacks than they have had. And that's not great. That is not – I mean, they've given up 2 sacks a game, but they've only gotten 8 sacks. So, Ohio State has not gotten a ton of pressure on the quarterback. But that also tells you, Indiana can do the great, crazy blitz stuff. But if it's not getting home, that just, maybe you're confusing someone into an interception, but maybe the thing that you're leaning on is just not going to work.
And blitzing that doesn't get home just leaves your defense in a bad spot. Mm-hmm. And if you leave a defense in a bad spot against Ohio State, they're going to take advantage of you. And maybe not the first time they see it, but second, third, fourth time when C.J. Stroud gets back to the sideline and they talk to him, hey, you saw this, but you missed this. This is what you should have seen. And then when he sees it next time, we know he's very good about that. Just you see it once, and you're able to do it. And then you start taking advantage. And this offensive line has been holding up. I would assume, you expect them to do the same. And as long as they do, really, I think defenses for the most part are helpless.
Yeah, if you can't get the pass rush there and you are maybe down 1 or 2 of your top corners or they're not 100% healthy, that's not a good winning recipe. Now, the standard for the offensive line this year is pretty high. It's not just keep C.J. Stroud upright. It is give him a big pocket. Give him a big, comfortable pocket. Not the pocket's kind of closing in, but I still have some time. Give him a ton of space where it's just there's no one around me. That was that Thayer Munford, Nick Petit Frere. Someone told us that either this week or last week. They were talking about just how big that is with a young quarterback. Just don't give him any reason to drop his eye level. Keep those eyes downfield because hey, we gotcha. It's cool. That is going to be something. If they can give him a big pocket and keep the pressure off him all day, that is not a winning combination for Indiana.
No, and especially not an Indiana offense that, as we talked about, can't score. How are we doing on questions? Should we get to some questions? We ready?
We should. Can we first judge Kevin's shirt, which says, "I love my Skyline chili"?
Oh, no. Do you love the chili or do you love the hot dogs?
The chili.
What about the hot dogs?
I mean, I don't put ketchup on them or anything.
You know what? This is not about me. This is not about ripping on me.
Well, it usually is.
That's where it ends up. The gravity of the conversation always ends up back that way. Don't give him a microphone.
It's over now. Eric says that he hopes to see Miyan have a good game tomorrow. Bucks will need him, and then he followed that up by saying down the stretch.
Yeah, I think that's going to be one to watch. It's been a while. How many games has he missed now? Three. And so now he'll be back, and I want to see the energy. I want to see him breaking tackles. I want to see him finishing on those runs and really getting back into it because, as we said, this is the stretch run now, and you've got to start picking it up. So, yeah, that's one guy that I'm looking forward to see what he does, see what he looks like, see what his attitude is, see how healthy he is, and just really I want to see how hard he runs.
Yeah, this is an opportunity for him because Trayvon Henderson is going to be the number one guy. That number two job is still up for grabs at this point. And, if he's the second guy in there and you run hard, you have an opportunity to win that because he has the ability. You saw it last year. He just has had kind of a shaky and not even shaky. He was very good against Minnesota, but it's just kind of been an up and down year. And the injuries have obviously messed with his season a little bit. But this is your chance. Like this is your opportunity to kind of make your statement. This is not this is a decent defense. This is not this is not Georgia or anything, but there's a decent defense. If you can, this is going to be your chance to maybe have 10, 12, maybe 15 carries, depending on how the game goes. If you get that opportunity, you better make the most of it because you're not necessarily going to have a ton of these opportunities coming down the line. But as to the questioner's point, they're going to need whoever that number two guy is at some point this year.
Yeah, you don't want to see like a 12 carries for 10 yards effort tomorrow from him at all.
Well, you don't want 12 carries for 36 yards.
He doesn't, obviously, because this is his opportunity.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if you get 10 carries, you want to see 60 yards. You don't want 10 carries for 30 yards. That's not gonna get you where you want to get. And you
could get you a starting job at Indiana.
That's actually, I have nothing to add that is either relevant or true.
I'm not saying, no, I'm not, just so you know, I wasn't talking about a transfer or anything. That's just what the starters average at Indiana. That's what I'm saying. That's all.
Tom Geiger jumps in and says, given Indiana linebacker blitzes, CJ will be able to find Rutgers, Stover, and Scott open in the middle. Tight end will be open. And we just got a super chat. I'll get to that one in a second. Tight end will be open. Buck should not have to punt.
Ohio State not punting, it feels like there's going to be a drive where, it's going to happen at some point. You can't ever bet on a team not punting. That is, Ohio State, Rutgers. I don't think they punted in that game. This is going to be more competitive than that, and I think there's a possibility Ohio State ends up in that 38 to 48 point kind of range, which is you're punting at some point in that game. But Tony, is this the year? Is this the week? Is this the week at the tight end?
That's a very good point. Or is it the weekend of there's no defense over the middle and you're just throwing drag routes and big gainers. Real quick on the punters and the Ryan Day's appreciation of unleashing anger. Do you think the Michigan game last year had it been played, would Ryan Day have even traveled Drew Chrisman?
Wasn't it a home game last year? So
would he have even had Drew Chrisman dress? Well, he's got to hold the punt. He's got to hold the snaps.
What I'm saying. Every time. There you go.
There you go.
Loophole.
Okay, we've got a couple of super chats. We'll jump in with Luke Comstock. Thank you for your super chat contribution. Rank the FBS schools in Indiana in the order of where you would rather cover a game at.
Well, I have not been to Notre Dame, so I would like to experience that and see what that is. Like, I've been to Indiana several times, but it doesn't stand out. So that might tell you something there. Purdue is
Worse.
let's just say interesting. I mean, the game that we saw there in 2018 was pretty remarkable. The entire scene. So I would say, without being to Notre Dame at all, and am I forgetting any? Is it just those
Ball
three?
State.
Ball State, Muncie, Ball State number 1. I have not been there. Notre Dame number 2, Indiana number 3, Purdue number 4. Tom, where are you?
I have not been to Muncie. I've been to the other 3. The only Notre Dame game I ever saw in Notre Dame Stadium was maybe Charlie Weiss's last year, whatever Charlie Weiss's last home game against Michigan State was. They lost to Michigan State. And it's like, it's like going to one of those ballparks you've seen on TV that's like, it's not remarkable, but it's just like, oh, hey, I've seen this on TV for years. Like, oh, hey, look at that, I'm here. They've got slashes in the end zones. Like, it's cool. Like, it's cool. It's not the craziest atmosphere. It's not the campus is nice. It's like, oh, hey, there's Touchdown Jesus. How about that? I've seen him on TV. It's fine. It's good. It's good. I would say Notre Dame 1, Indiana 2, Purdue. West Lafayette is, I guess if I had to sum it up in 2 words, uniquely charmless. I have not been to Champaign, Illinois for a game, but I understand it's basically the rich man Champaign, Illinois, more or less. And yeah, Bloomington's a nice college town. I like Bloomington. So, yeah, and Muncie, I love MAC football. I have seen games at Toledo and Ohio and I think Bowling Green. Like, I like MAC football, so like I would do that some year when Ohio University is playing at Ball State or something. I'd go see a game there, but I don't know. Is that number 2?
Well, I think Ball State, you've got, I assume, shrines to David Letterman. What kind of shrines does Notre Dame have? Next question.
Yeah, exactly. Jordan Kapler also with the super chat. Thank you, Jordan. On a scale of yuck to meh, how excited are you to be in Bloomington? Also, to answer your question yesterday, Kevin, yes, I am trying to boot you to Louisiana. And the story on that was that he ran into an in-law of mine, apparently, somebody from my wife's family, and conversation started, and my name came up. So my reach knows no bounds. I don't know, but yuck to meh. How excited are you to be in Bloomington?
Can we start with the fact that Jordan is apparently just walking around and just introducing himself to people with, "Hi, I'm Jordan. Do you know Kevin Noon?" I mean, that's how I introduce myself to people, and they're like, "Why are you calling yourself Jordan?" But that's a different question. Yuck to meh. Yuck to meh. Like, Bloomington's fine. Bloomington's nice. Bloomington is fine. Like, Bloomington is not my favorite Big Ten road trip, but it's a nice college town. There's there's good restaurants here. It's not like the, big city vibe. It's more of a college town vibe. I like it. It's, like State College, I guess. Maybe nice. It's maybe nicer than State College, but there's, it's a sort of similar vibe where you can drive the way we drove. We came down 71. You're driving through not a whole heck of a lot for a while before you get here. So it's a little State College-y like that to me. So, it's in that, State College, Iowa City, college town kind of.
I'm thinking the woodedness of it is kind of a Michigan State vibe too.
Yeah.
So, there's some hills. There's, it's fine. There's a charm to all college towns, except for maybe Maryland and what they've got going on there. Maybe, I don't know.
Maryland wasn't terrible. We went out the one time, like in the campus area, and it was fine, but it wasn't very charming.
Yeah. But thank you guys for the super chats. Thank you, Jordan, for just walking around asking people about Kevin Noon. I think that's great. More people should do it.
Amen to that. We've got a lot of things here. Mika Hanna, who told me that I was pronouncing his name incorrectly before. What's wrong with EA and why hasn't he played more?
Well, at this point, there's not really a position for him that they play like, because he's the Sam linebacker, essentially, or that's what his role has been, as that third linebacker. And if they're not playing 3 linebackers, which they're not, because they play a Will and a Mike, which are the 2 inside backers, and replacing the outside linebacker is Ronnie Hickman, or more now basically is Cam Martinez and Marcus Williamson as that slot guy, the nickel guy, and Ronnie Hickman moves back to the boundary safety spot. He's the bullet, but he's also the boundary safety, and so they've replaced that Sam with, whichever. Basically, it's Marcus Williamson or Cameron Martinez as that guy who is going to cover the strong side. And so that's why Nao Teote hasn't been in there much. Plus, he was on the unavailable list last week or the week before that.
The week before.
So there's been some injury issues there. And then, of course, they couldn't really have a spot for him before the season because they didn't even know if he was going to be able to play.
Right, and he went through all of fall camp in like NCAA purgatory, and by the time he got declared eligible, it was like the day or two before the Minnesota game, and they had not been practicing. He had not been getting regular reps because it's like, we're not going to spend reps when we've got this real uncertain linebacker position. We're not going to spend reps on a guy who we don't know if he's going to be able to play or not. So that he fell a little bit behind there. He's had some injury issues, and then to your point, the linebacker roles have shifted. That Sam spot, that's where like Baron Browning was last year. They have not been playing a Baron Browning linebacker this year. He's a little bit bigger. If they play Iowa, for example, in the Big Ten championship game, maybe they go to more of a traditional three linebacker look, and you take the Cam Martinez, Marcus Williamson position off the field, and then you do see more of him. This is probably not a week you're going to see that. I don't think you're going to see that against Penn State. Maybe Michigan State, maybe, but probably not. Probably not Purdue, maybe Michigan. Maybe you see him more against Michigan if they, try and man-ball you. But he's going to be he's just going to have more of a situational role this year for all the reasons we just laid out there.
I think against Iowa, I wonder, they only have 6 healthy linebackers on scholarship. Can they play all 6 against Iowa, like in the same lineup? To defend Iowa's running game and their tight ends. Like, you just need one cornerback for the 2 receivers. I don't care what side, they're going to be on opposite sides. That's okay. You just play the linebackers and you play defensive line.
So a 3-6-2?
No, let's go 4-6-1. I like to play dangerous.
So single high, but just yeah.
like when you play NCAA football, and I know you mentioned this the other day. Like when you're really good, like back in the day, you could just play punt block all the time. But you have Ted Ginn as the punt returner, so he's your deep safety, and then you just have him running around trying to catch deep passes and taking them back for 6. It's great. It used to be anyway.
Wow, back in the day. Mar Day says, hello, this is my first time being on here, and I watch you all often. My question is, if the Buckeyes get in the playoffs, do you think that they will play Georgia and win? I'm an Ohio native that lives in Georgia.
Ooh, well, thank you for the question. Do you say when or win? Your LA accent is off-putting.
Do you think
Pronounced
win?
accent.
What?
Well, my LA accent is different than my wife's LA because hers is Louisiana. So win, W-I-N, because all I do is win.
When?
Hopefully we don't get dinged for saying it.
Yes. No, I like Ohio State against Georgia because Buckeyes have an offensive line. We know Georgia's defensive line, Jordan Davis and all of that, blah, 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 blah. But you've got an Ohio State offensive line that can protect the quarterback. If you give them time, they've got the receivers, you've got the running back. It's a very complete offense. Georgia's offense is not sure. They think Stetson Bennett is the guy, but he can sometimes have some down moments. The Georgia offense is not as explosive, as prolific as they would like, which kind of sets up good for Ohio State's defense. I don't think that's a terrible matchup for the Buckeyes.
No, I think Georgia is going to come into the playoff in a very similar position to Ohio State, where they're going to come in and their defense has really not been tested by a great offense, because you go through Georgia's schedule and it's like, what's the best offense on this schedule? And it's like, well, they're going to play Alabama in the SEC championship game. And other than that, and Ohio State Georgia to me just has this feel of 31-28. And I don't know who wins the game, but Ohio State is talented enough and explosive enough to score a little bit on Georgia. And Georgia's offense is good enough that they're going to be able to score on Ohio State some, but Bill Green always talks about how playoff games you end up having to score in the 40s to win. That feels like a game you're not necessarily going to have to score into the 40s. And as far as when, that's kind of, that's going to be dependent on a lot of other teams. does Georgia beat Alabama? If Georgia beats Alabama and runs the table, they're number 1. So then it would be Ohio State would have to be 4 in order to play them in the first round, which means you probably need Oklahoma to run the table to be ahead of Ohio State, and maybe Oregon if Oregon runs the table and looks impressive, or because I don't think Cincinnati stays ahead of Ohio State if Ohio State is 12-1 Big Ten champ. So to me, unless Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship game, at which point Alabama's 1, let's say Georgia's 2 or 3, Ohio State's 2, and Oklahoma's 4, or maybe Ohio State's 4 at that point and Oklahoma's 2. I mean,
it almost feels like they can't play until the finals. It's hard to find a way where it's 1 and 4 or 2 and 3, where Ohio State is a 3 or a 2, because I don't see Georgia or Alabama. If Alabama wins, I think Georgia probably moves to 3.
Yeah, they're not going to set up a rematch, I don't think. So let's say it's Alabama 1, Georgia 2 or 3. If Oklahoma loses, and it's, Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, Cincinnati, something like that. That's where they could play in the semifinal. And at that point, you're playing Georgia or Alabama gets first pick. They probably pick the Orange Bowl, unless they pick the Cotton Bowl because they've played there before and you have the familiarity there because they played the Rose Bowl there at the Cotton Bowl last year. But that's about the only scenario where I see that happening.
Yeah.
All right, next one. First, let's lay out for this one for a second, guys.
Well, that could be about anything.
Eric asking, who is sleeping on the cot tonight?
Cameraman Kevin, pan over. Show us the beautiful couch of shame.
Let me loosen this up. I've got this thing locked in so well.
There's the couch of shame. Tony, first of all, let's explain what the couch... Sorry, let's explain... I guess I'll start, since you're pointing the microphone at me now for once. The couch of shame and or cot of shame is one of the great traditions in all of American college football. Tony and I do a weekly bold prediction show. The loser from the week before any road trip, we're always in a hotel room that has 2 beds. There are 3 of us on the crew. So someone has to sleep on the either rollaway cot or the pull-out couch. The loser of the bold prediction segment...
Can we just say not winner?
The loser of the bold prediction segment from the previous week has to sleep on the bed and or cot of the cot or couch of shame. Tony, of course, lost.
Not of course.
Tony, of course, lost the last time we did this. Humiliatingly, if I recall correctly.
I wasn't humiliated.
And it takes a lot.
I have no shame.
So Tony gets to sleep on the cot of shame, couch of shame, whereas I will be sleeping in the bed of triumph, which I sleep in every night.
There's no bed of triumph. There's just bed of no shame. And I'm not even sure that that's actually true, Tom, because this is all very shameful on your part. You know what? We do it for the viewers, for the listeners. I don't mind it. It's a very comfortable couch. It has 2 cushions and
We don't even have a flat sheet for you, to my knowledge, unless it's already on there. In my closet, there was a blanket that was probably put there when this place was built, and I've sacrificed 1 pillow, and I made sure to find the softest one for you.
I'll be honest. I am probably going to have to move the chair over or use the coffee table here as an extended area for a leg stretch. And as soon as I walked in, I looked at the couch and like, oh God, those arms are very high. How are the? Because if it's one thing if the arms can act as a pillow, there's no acting on these arms. This is to protect a baby from falling on the floor. This is not to protect my head from sleeping like a baby.
Ben Higgins asked, "How about just getting 3 rooms?"
I like company.
The State of American Media 2021, my column.
Yeah, 3 rooms is expensive, especially when you're in a college town the night before a game where there are some hotel rooms in Bloomington this weekend that cost upwards of $900, and you had to pay for 2 nights. So 3 people, 2 nights, $900 a night. Tom?
I've heard that we got 2 super chats. I don't know if they were $900 each, but if they were, then we can stay in a nicer place or have multiple rooms for what's our next road trip? Nebraska.
I'm just saying that I think that Ben Higgins needs to be a special advisor to our travel. All hail Ben.
Yes.
All right, let me jump in here. We've got so many good questions. We are already at 45 minutes, 2:07. We have the computer plugged in. I'm being informed it's being a little glitchy. We're just the internet here. We're doing what we can. So we'll go over another.
Unplug the fridge. Maybe that will help.
Well, apparently we don't have the air on because it's a little stale in here. But at least the door doesn't hold heat, so I'm getting all the cool air from outside. But enough about my problems.
Yes, very much so.
Old Toby, Indiana was mouthy last season. They deserve to get smacked around.
Tom, if anybody deserves to be smacked around, is it Indiana?
Or is it Tom?
Thank you, Kevin. Next question.
I was getting all self-conscious, Tony. I think Tony was starting to feel bad that I'm always picking on him, and I know Tom can take it. So I know. Even there was a little backhanded. I'm sorry.
But what do you think about the time to give it to Indiana type of thing?
I think that there's no reason to offer them quarter at this point. I think you go out there and you run your offense, and if you're in the fourth quarter and you're still throwing, okay, so be it. I agree with, I don't remember, I think it may have been Tom that made the statement that you don't want to sit there and, well, it may have been Tony, I don't know. You don't want to put guys in undue harm late in the game because you do have so many big games coming up. But heck, we just came all the way out here. We may as well play a game of football. We may as well, it's 4 quarters. People paid for 4 quarters of football. We're going to give it to you.
I like the idea that Ohio State will show them no quarter. I call this the Fourth Amendment game.
Oh, Lord.
Google Constitution. Google Bill of Rights after the show.
People can't take back the Super Chats, can they?
I don't think so. I don't know how. Sloopcast Kyle, much love to Tom, Tony, and Kevin. Keep up the great work. As you know, if you want to get your comment read, sit there and say great things about us, and it will get read.
Yeah,
so,
and make sure you add in Kevin there, or else we will never hear about it.
I'll just quietly brood in the corner. Sue, jumping into staying on the same topic, Tony, it's always about ripping on you.
You know what? It's been that way since I was little. I have an older brother, an older sister, and a mom. So that's all they ever used to do. And then now we're in a group chat, and they still do the same thing.
We have a super chat we should be getting the cash register sound for here in a second. But Eric, thank you for the contribution. Thanks for the great content, fellas. I like turtles.
My understanding is that Kevin likes turtles. That was my understanding a couple weeks ago.
I don't think he actually read the question. I think he read the question, then he added on that he likes turtles.
No, Eric said he likes turtles. I mean,
There's nothing wrong with turtles. I know people who have had turtles and had them for a very long time. They come to you when you call from the aquarium.
Eventually.
People swear by the turtles. That's all.
I saw one I really wanted to get to, and I'm not finding. All right, here's a great one from David. David says, I keep rewatching the midseason highlights and cannot wait for the second half of the season.
Yeah, I would agree. There's a lot to see yet, and it feels like it's been 6 games, but you've only gotten to see portions of what this offense can do because guys are only playing a half. And now you're getting to the point where you're going to get to see them play for upwards of 2 quarters now, but into the fourth quarter. And this is one of the things that I always loved when I was in college and I would go to the games. And just so you know, I went when it was in the mid-'90s. It was Bobby Hoying in 95 and Terry Glenn and Eddie George. And then in 96 and 97, 98, it's Joe Germain and Stan Jackson, Michael Wiley, Pepe Pearson, David Boston. I would be like, because the offenses were so explosive right there. Ohio State's got the ball at 24. They're on 24. Like, okay, here could be a 76-yard touchdown. I'm like, not that I'm good at math, but I can pretty quickly come up with, okay, this would be a 72-yarder. But like, that was the expectation back then. Something big is going to happen, and it's going to be, boom, 70 yards, boom, 60. Somebody asks, how long was that? And that was a 67-yarder. Weren't you paying attention? And this kind of offense, these playmakers have that same sort of feel where anything can happen, anywhere, anytime. And when it does, it's never really a surprise.
Well, and I think what makes this season particularly interesting is this was not a finished product at the beginning of the year. This has been very much a project for the coaching staff to sort of puzzle out and figure out what they have and how best to utilize it. Because the talent's there, but it didn't look like it for the first couple weeks of the season. Now you can sort of see them putting the pieces into place. And, you've had the last 3 weeks have been kind of asterisk games where it's, wow, they look great, but it was only Akron. Wow, but it was Rutgers, but it was Maryland. And if they look great this weekend, you're going to hear, but it was only Indiana. But after Indiana,
It was only Penn State.
You don't have very many but it was onlys after that. You got Penn State. You go to Nebraska, which they have not won a ton of games this year, but they've been competitive in all of their games. They've been a pain in the butt for a lot of teams they've had to play. You got Purdue, who's all of a sudden ranked. Then you got Michigan State, who's top 10 right now. You got Michigan, who's top 10 right now. You've got Iowa, who's borderline top 10 right now, potentially after that. And then you have a college football playoff. Like there are no more games where Ohio State walks in and it's just like, well, they're going to win this game by 50 points. Like Indiana could keep this competitive tomorrow. And what does competitive look like? 35-17. Like this could be competitive after halftime tomorrow. That would not shock me. And there's a way they lose it if they're -3 in turnovers or something like that. But this is a season that has gotten more interesting and intriguing in the first half as this team has gotten better so rapidly that you sort of wonder how good could they be in a month or two. And as you're playing better competition, you're going to start getting more of those questions answered each week.
Let me jump into this one. I'll just read it and then we'll go on to the next question because it was more of an explanation from Jordan Kapler. I go around introducing myself and ask people if they know Kevin Noon. I do that because the last time I asked people if they knew Tony, I was locked in the gulag with a hockey puck steaks with catsup.
So the answer is yes, they did know me.
Apparently. Well, now I have to change everything I was going to do. We have another super chat. Razzmatazz.
I wish that money had come in before Jordan had spoken.
Well, but, I needed closure on that, and I'm the guy running the ones and twos, so there you go.
I got a one for you.
Right here. Razzmatazz, thank you for your super chat. What's your favorite donut, and is there a good donut shop nearby?
There actually is a donut place nearby. For me, the very best donut, I'm Krispy Kreme. A warm or hot Krispy Kreme is the absolute best. There's no second. Cake donuts are fine. Yeast donuts from Krispy Kreme. See, Kevin is giving a thumbs up. Tom gave this disgusted bagels are the best donut look because he's from New Jersey or wherever East Coast state he wants to be.
I like my Mets donuts.
Yeah, he likes turtle donuts.
Anyway, so Tony's like, ask Tony, what's the best burger? Oh, it has to be Wendy's because it's square. Like, well, there's actually other places.
Go ahead. No,
yes.
Go ahead.
So I have always been rather than going into specific donut places, like you've got the Duck Donut kind of places and that kind of places. But you have those places that will, some of them will let you custom make your donuts. Mm-hmm. I always like those. My personal favorite is the maple bacon. I'm a big maple person, especially in the fall. Put a little bacon on top of there. It's never quite as good as you think it should be because it feels like it should be a 15 out of 10. Instead, it's like a 10.5 out of 10, which is still, pretty good and mathematically impossible.
Krispy Kreme is always a 12 out of 10, a 12 out of 8.
Krispy Kreme is really good. I think if we're just talking about a type of donut, though, I do like, and how do you say this without people being like, but a jelly-filled donut is always fantastic. I think that a jelly-filled donut...
Tom.
Exactly.
And I grew up on the Nickles Bakery, and their little mini donut crawlers have been a part of my life for a very long time. So shout out to Nickles Bakery here in Ohio.
I'm going to jump in. We won't get into it right now at this point, but Yakov asking where we ate. You're going to have to just wait until we run our food segment. I'm going to edit that as soon as we're done with this, but probably not post it till Saturday morning. So you have something to look forward to as you wait for a 7:30 kickoff.
Yeah, and Tom did tease Wendy's.
That's an Ohio place, Tony, please.
Let's keep going here. German drummer 13. What's going on with Seibert? How come our Scully kicker doesn't play?
Well, I think the thing there is he got beaten out. They brought somebody in because they needed assurances. They needed insurance for him, and I think it's better to have two kickers that you're still trying to figure out than one kicker that you're not quite so sure out. And go back to Josh Houston and Mike Nugent as redshirt freshmen. were the worst kickers in the world. And you've got Jake Seibert at the same point in his career. And I'm not saying he's the worst kicker in the world, age-wise. And sometimes
That's T. Gerdeman at netscape.net.
Sorry, Mr. Seibert. But yeah, it takes time. And Noah Ruggles is a veteran. This is his 4th or 5th year in college. He's been through some of these things. He's won a job. He's lost it. He's very experienced, and at this point,
he's perfect. He's
Yeah.
6 of 6 on field goals. All of his PATs have been true. I mean, we've seen DeMacio go out there and kick. So I mean, I'm not sure about what's happening with Seibert, but Noah Ruggles has been playing very well. So I mean, I guess in the situation, yeah, you want to see everybody get their opportunity, but Noah Ruggles has not done anything to lose any opportunity in my book.
plus he's been injured, hasn't he?
Yeah, Seibert was on the availability report at least once or twice in the last few weeks. But yeah, I mean, how are you going to win a job back from a guy who's been perfect? That is a tough ask.
But you know what? Be better.
Sloopcast Kyle, I loved him up until a moment ago, asking about Burger King. We don't want to talk about that.
Kevin's not a big Burger King fan.
They all know. It's all of our regulars on here right now. They all know us. All the names are so familiar. I mean,
just wanted-
Treasure the Torah's on. Everybody. I mean, everybody that normally Sue. I mean, all of them are on. Joshua Hunt. I mean, if I don't name you, I apologize, but it's all of our regs.
I just wanted to eliminate a possible sponsor.
Well, there you go. Well, come on board, Krispy Kreme. Another question from David. What will see?
That sounds like a pickup line.
Well,
Sounds like something you say into a Mr. Microphone.
Come on board, Krispy Kreme.
or Mr. Luby.
Yes. Do you want to explain Mr. Luby?
We were driving past as we were coming back from the restaurant this evening, we were driving past a closed oil change shop with the somewhat humorous name Mr. Luby. That's it. That's the joke.
Well, when you tell it like that, it's not very funny. I just had to answer a question about the last time when I was at Del Taco. That's been 2 weeks. Back to David Linton's question. What will CJ look like next year? Dropping dimes like they are pennies from heaven.
As long as Ohio State has receivers to catch the ball, and that's going to be the thing. I mean, they should, and an offensive line to protect him. And again, they should. But yeah, I mean, a year under his belt, he should be what, I don't know, where would you put him in terms of the Dwayne Haskins track? In terms of, will he be Dwayne Haskins this year, or will it be next year? It's hard to ask that in November and December. I don't think it's hard to ask that in September, October of next year. I think you're going to see a guy completing 70, 72, 74% of his passes in games that are, where the weather is good and the opponents are kind of like this one tomorrow. I think he is going to be every bit will be talked about as, is he the greatest Ohio State quarterback of all time? And right now, there's two to me in terms of throwers, and it's Justin Fields and it's Dwayne Haskins. And what C.J. Stroud is doing right now will put him in the conversation by the end of the year, but people will defer to the previous two guys. Next year is when you start asking, where is he? Is he one or two?
And I'm just pulling up Dwayne Haskins' stats from 2018 right now. He was 70% completion, right on the nose, 345 yards per game, 50 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Stroud this year is 66%, 339 yards per game, 18 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. So he's on track to be not quite as good as Haskins statistically, but he's not that far off. And part of the reasons Haskins' numbers are so crazy is they didn't really have a running game that year. Dobbins and Weber, just neither of them could get in a flow, and Dobbins always talked about the fact that he was trying too hard to hit a home run. They talked about the fact that they just, you're playing, you're running, and then all of a sudden now you're on the bench for 2 series, and it was hard to get in the flow of the game. The offensive line wasn't very good. I mean, all that stuff added up to, well, I hope they can throw well today, because otherwise there's no way they can move the ball. And that has not been an issue this year. So there's been less pressure on Stroud to create those numbers. But if he, as a redshirt freshman this year, is already putting up numbers that are, in the same stratosphere as Haskins, I think he could be, again, there's some question. If you're losing Olave, you're losing Wilson next year. I know they've got a lot of talent. Those are still 2 of the best wide receivers in Ohio State history. You don't just automatically replace them. but he can be at Haskins' level or better potentially, even if the numbers don't look quite as crazy.
Yeah, and I don't think the numbers will because they'll be able to run the ball. You've got Trayvon Henderson. You're not going to ignore him. So the numbers won't be there, but I think the look, just the pinpoint passing in the tight windows will be there.
I want to make an introduction here. Tony, meet Nuclear Dragon FTW. Fun. I work at Nickles Bakery.
Hey, there you go. Appreciate the Nickles Bakery people. They had, back there, and again, just a second mention of Napoleon, Ohio. They had, a bakery you could go and get all of your bread goods.
Bread goods. Bread and
Donuts.
such.
Like when you go downtown and you can smell like the Wonder Bread, and it smells like donuts, and that's the same situation there. And you could, you didn't have to go to the store. You could, there's no middleman, so the prices are a little bit lower. So yeah, good stuff. Thank you for Bread Talk.
A good friend of the show, Pats 11. I'm a grad student here at Indiana, but an Ohio State alum, and won't be going to the game. And then some sort of frowny face emoji.
Tom, frowny face.
Well, I guess the question is why you aren't going to the game, because I'm going to pull up StubHub right now, and I'm going to guess with Indiana 2-4 that the tickets are not going to be crazy expensive to get into the game. So if you can't go due to your scheduling, that's one thing. But I'm going to guess tickets are not going to be ludicrously expensive.
So basically, Tom's going to judge you. If it's not a scheduling thing, you are judged.
Thomas is a grad student. Graduate school is expensive, and you're going to shame them for not going
They're probably still getting carded at that place we were at, like the Arkansas guy was, or
Right.
whatever. I mean, is that a real ID?
Tony, I want you to just look. There are a lot of tickets available at a very nice price point. I mean, in the high 60s is going to be, it is understandable. That's a little more than I was expecting. I was thinking this was going to be like a $35 game. There's a couple
and then there are probably fees and everything else, unless you're on TickPick.
What it says there, the get-in price is $69.
The get-in price is $65, but there's just a couple at there,
Tony,
one at
nice.
$68, and then a number at $69, which are all labeled as best value.
There, that is a good value.
Sue isn't going to be, or she'll make it to see the game, but she's got a wedding reception early tomorrow, and then we'll get home to watch the game. Somebody else jumped in. I lost track of that comment and said that fall weddings in Columbus should be banned. And then Sue reminded everybody she lives up in Toledo. And then that ended up devolving into the War of Toledo. And we had a great retelling of how all of that went down.
I do recall, because I grew up in Northwest Ohio, it was almost half Michigan, half Ohio State fans. And that was because Michigan was doing a lot of the winning. And then when I would come back, nowadays it's not so much. But I do remember some of the logic back then. It's like, why are you a Michigan fan? Why aren't you an Ohio State fan? And sometimes the logic was, well, we're closer to Michigan. Closer to Michigan than Ohio, Tom.
Jordan Kapler with another super
Let
chat.
Tom finish.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just going to draw the parallel.
Jordan can wait.
I was just going to.
Ooh. I will be refunding that $5 to you, Jordan.
First of all, how dare you, sir? My point was going to be that Ohio State and Michigan fandom in Northwest Ohio feels like it mirrors to me like Mets-Yankees fandom in New York, where when the Mets are good, like in the 80s when I was a kid, it was like 50% Mets fans, 50% Yankees fans. When they're both good, it's like 60-40 Yankees fans when the Yankees are good and when the Mets are bad. When would that ever happen? It's like 70-30 or even 75-25. I have a feeling you're kind of in the 70-30 kind of range up there in Northwest Ohio right now.
Yeah, and really, they don't. And the thing is, like, they don't print as many Michigan shirts up north anymore because they don't sell. So you're not seeing as many fans as well. And I'm sure it's a lot like Kevin being a Dodgers fan. Sometimes he's a Dodgers fan, sometimes he's an Angels fan. It just depends on the season.
No, and I grew up closer to Angel Stadium, but no. Jordan Kapler, and this isn't even an embarrassing question for Tom or Tony. If OSU coach has to play tomorrow in the position they coach, who would you like to see suit up? If J.R. Smith can get eligibility, so can they.
Is there an answer other than Brian Hartline? I feel like there's not an answer other than Brian Hartline. I mean, because I would like to see Ryan Day play quarterback, but I think Brian Hartline, like we see Brian Hartline out there running routes half the time, like when we're watching practice. Like he's out there, and the receivers will talk about the fact that he carries a pair of receiver gloves in his back pocket, like just to go put them on and just like he'll go demonstrate. Like I think Brian Hartline could go out tomorrow and catch 5 passes for 70 yards. He'd have to stretch a little bit because he's getting a little older, but 5 catches for 75 yards tomorrow, over under for Brian Hartline.
I would go under.
Hater.
Because
Hater.
That's T. Gerdeman at Netscape.net.
they're don't give out my Netscape address. They're very deep, and plus, I think after 1 or 2 or 3 catches, he's going to be talking so much trash. They're going to be like, "Hey, that's Brian Hartline," and so like the refs would figure that out, and they would. Plus, if he's out there wearing 9 Olave or 0-2 Olave, I think they would notice.
Ben Higgins jumps in. So 3 grown men have to share one room, but a college student should be going to the game. Rude, Tom.
I'm just saying, like I thought, I looked up, and after I looked up the prices, I realized it was a little more expensive. I have been pricing Blue Jackets tickets quite a bit this week, and those have been extremely reasonable. I was assuming this was going to be in that $25 to $30 range. Mm-hmm. This was more expensive than I expected, and this is if you were an Ohio State person in Indiana, it's like I'm a Mets fan in Ohio. When the Mets are in Pittsburgh or in Cincinnati, I will generally make a point to go see them because they don't play in this area very often. That's all. No judgment. And once I saw it was not a $25, $30 ticket, like then it was like, I rescind my comment.
It's a sellout, so tickets are going to be expensive. You should have realized that, and before you make somebody feel bad, especially a college student, a graduate student, that's terrible, Tom.
Back to the previous question, several votes for Al Washington. Any Pats 11 says Combs at DB. So,
Ooh. Now, we haven't seen him do some backpedaling. I remember watching practice one time, and they were doing fumble drills, scoop and score drills, and he jumped on a ball and secured it. There was no scooping or scoring. It was more securing the fumble, and he did that. And that was a few years ago. And, yeah, let's see that backpedal. And let's, does he have a memory? You can't have a conscience. You can't have a memory. And see him get beat like just imagine what Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave would do to him, and then what they would say afterwards.
Knowing Kerry Combs and having seen Kerry Combs headbutt people without a helmet on at various points, there was a Michigan game at some point where he was on the field after the game with blood running down his face. Does he even bother wearing a helmet for the game? Because if not, he can only play one play at a time.
Well, they're gonna certainly flag him or remove him, but that would be fun to see. And if you want to make Sports Center, that's one way to do it: is sneak onto the field and play a play.
I've heard that blood makes the grass grow.
There you go.
Artificial turf here, so.
Well, there you go. Adam Baker, you guys find IU's 2020 Big Ten Championship trophy?
No, but we haven't actually been to campus. We'll check that out tomorrow. We'll go looking.
Maybe it's behind the rock.
Could be behind the rock. We'll look. We'll just snoop around and maybe we'll ask some people, hey, where is that Big Ten Championship trophy? That's a good question. We should do some research on that. Maybe ask the Indiana SID, and then he will politely remove us. So we might not actually ask him that.
On the way out the door. How about that?
Yes.
We've had a lot of great questions from Jay Burke. I have like 6 of them in here. I'm trying to find the one that I like the most. We're going to use this one. Ohio State controls their destiny as far as winning their games, but we all know the playoff committee controls the rest of it. And ESPN National Championship campaign to get 2 SEC teams in the playoffs. And then he also had another one where he kind of talked about continuing on that the campaign's already going on, that Ohio State's going to be the first one left out.
Well, I guess it kind of depends. What are the 2 SEC? How does the SEC thing play out? Because if Ohio State wins out, they're 12-1, and they win. You at that point have wins over Penn State, Michigan, probably Iowa. That's probably 4 ranked wins in your previous 7 weeks. I mean, that's going to be 6 weeks at that point. That's going to be hard to overlook. I think the scenario where they get left out maybe is Alabama and Georgia win out, and then Alabama beats Georgia, so they both are 12-1. Oklahoma wins out, so they're unbeaten. Maybe Oregon gets it together and runs the table, and they just have to lean entirely. I mean, Ohio State's body of work at that point is going to be a million times better than Oregon's. Maybe they lean real heavily on that head-to-head. maybe Cincinnati if they really. I find it hard to believe that the committee is going to look at Ohio State and put in Oregon or Cincinnati ahead of them, just based on the committee's past history. Ohio State, when they miss out, tends to miss out against Alabama, which is another school that also draws TV eyeballs, and I just don't really see that happening. If Ohio State wins out, I think, barring something really crazy, I think Ohio State probably is in, just because in order to win out, you're going to have beaten so many good teams.
Yeah, and I know conspiracy people say stuff like, it's about ratings as well. And if that's true, you don't want Oregon in there. You want Ohio State in there. You don't want Cincinnati in there. You want Ohio State in there. So there's, from different areas, there are reasons to think that it would be Ohio State over those two. And again, I think Oregon really has to turn it on to convincingly overtake Ohio State, or to even or come back and overtake them, because I think Ohio State has passed them by at this point.
We're at 70 minutes. Want to do 3 more?
Sure.
3 more sound good? All right. Joshua Hunt. Hey, Joshua, good friend of mine. Over-under set at 10.5 carries for Miyan Williams.
I'm going over. I think it's time. He's come back, and you got to get that rust off. And so get him working and get him moving, get his spirits up, get him back into the picture, get him back into the flow. Maybe, what is his career high? Because was it 11 against Minnesota, or how many did he have in that game? So maybe, yeah, I'm definitely going over 10.5, and I feel really, really good about that one. Tom, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think if he's the number 2 back, and I sort of feel like he's going to be the number 2 back, then I think if he's number 2, he goes over that. Mm-hmm. I mean, the only way you don't go over that is if they really have to lean heavily on Trayvon Henderson for some reason. Yeah. If he's not producing at all, Trayvon Henderson is. It's a somewhat close game. They're going to keep Henderson in there, but I expect, we've talked about the fact that they may not have their full contingent of running backs. Maybe he does get that many carries. I think that's the scenario where he does. We did hear this week that Evan Pryor has been impressive. Yeah. They're looking to get Evan Pryor into the rotation more. So, maybe he doesn't hit it because Evan Pryor gets 3 or 4 carries at some point too.
14 career high against Oregon, 14 for 77 yards for Miyan Williams. I think he'll get over 10.5. I'm not going to go over 14 though.
No, that sounds fair to me. Razmataz may have jumped on a little late, asked who the corners are for Indiana. That's a good question. I think Tom Allen is asking that question of who's going to be available.
Yeah, it should. Well, I can't say should, but Trayvon Mullen and Reese Taylor are their 2 starters. They've been banged up all week, but have been practicing a little. So if they're only practicing a little, they're going to be undermanned, and they're not going to be 100%, so that's an advantage Ohio State. And if they're not practicing enough to play, that's really going to be advantage Ohio State.
Yeah, I mean, the guys being, assuming you're getting a straight answer from Tom Allen, and they were like getting some work in, that to me, if you're working back from an injury and it's like, well, you're kind of okay, you're kind of in the realm of being able to play, you're not necessarily going to rush that guy back. If he hasn't had a full week of practice, Tom Allen, I think, has to be a little bit pragmatic about this, which is like playing your corners is just going to make the game closer. It's not actually going to win this game. Indiana probably has some winnable games coming up on the schedule. You got to win your winnable games at this point, with Indiana being 2-4. I don't think you can play for the and then a miracle happened game against Ohio State. You're 2 and you lose, you go to 2-5. You have an opportunity to beat Purdue later. That's a game that, but you can't risk getting these guys hurt, aggravating that injury, and then losing what are more winnable games later on the schedule.
I have a question. Are we overlooking Indiana? Because we keep talking about how this, the blowout that is coming, you're going to have corners, but does it really matter because you can't possibly beat Ohio State? Are we overlooking Indiana here? I see Kevin with a little bit of no, we're not.
Well, I was just going to sit there and say I think that if Trayvon Mullen and Reese Taylor were both healthy, then maybe I might feel a little bit better about their chances. If Michael Penix were healthy, I would feel a little bit better about their chances. But when you sit there and you take one guy out pretty much for sure, I would be shocked to see Penix out there. I was talking to some people out in front of where our Scoop Eats location was, and they were talking about Jack Tuttle. And then potentially both starting corners. That really doesn't help. That's saying like, all right, you're going to fight vintage Mike Tyson, and we're going to tie your right arm behind your back. I mean, it's just probably not going to work out for you.
I have a score update.
Yes.
From the Licking County League. Granville 23, Watkins 7, 2:30 left. Granville 2:30 away from a perfect regular season.
It's pretty good.
Go Blue Aces.
There you go. I want to thank everybody for all their questions. I'm sorry to the ones we didn't get to. We tried our best. We got one more here. Mika Hanna, do you think C.J. Hicks stays at linebacker? He looks really big.
No, yeah, he is the perfect linebacker for what Ohio State is going to be doing defensively, in my opinion. And I think he is an inside linebacker that can run around and do all sorts of things. To me, he's another, I don't want to say Ryan Shazier, but has all of those kinds of athletic traits where he can run, he can cover, and maybe do some blitzing. And shoot, we've all seen him in high school, and they have difficulty stopping him from getting into the backfield. And again, that's high school where sometimes guys just don't get blocked and you can out scheme them, and that's what he does. They put him in a position to just, you don't even have to worry about getting blocked. Just go get the quarterback, and the quarterback has 0.7 seconds and he's done. And so yeah, he's probably like 6'2.5", 220 by the time he gets to 225 when he gets to college.
He's not as big as Gabe Powers.
Yeah.
Everybody is convinced that Gabe Powers may slide down, but I think Hicks is going to be just the right size.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, Hicks is listed at 218 right now, so if he's 225, that's the size that Steele Chambers is right now. Steele Chambers is the smallest of the Ohio State linebackers. Tommy Eichenberg's 235. Reed Carrico's true freshman, he's at 230. The big linebackers like Naote Ote, 248, Mitchell Melton, 245. Taraji Mitchell, 239. I mean, he may look big now, but that's because he's on a field with high school players. As someone who is not a tiny individual who, once you get around Ohio State football players, it's like, oh, I'm actually not that tall or that big. Like, oh, that's okay. Well, this puts everything in an entirely new perspective.
Yeah, he's very much the prototype of what you are going to see more and more of. And, he's really athletic and is still, I think he's finally come into his own as a linebacker. And he started out as a defensive back and got bigger and bigger. I wonder, maybe the better question is, where is Sonny Styles going to end up?
I was just Googling Sonny Styles' height and weight.
Well, because he's listed like 6'4", 215.
Just defense, because,
Yeah.
I mean, he could play on all three levels. I mean, safety now, he could slide down, you could stand him up, and he could be that rush end. I think, you figure that one out when you have to figure that one out. You just tell him, hey, our plan for you is yes. Our plan for you is yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's the Sam Hubbard plan. Like, yeah, come here, and you can come here as a safety, and then maybe you can be a linebacker, or then you go to the NFL as a defensive end. Like, we'll just see how much Coach Mick can get on you, and once you figure that out, then go to town.
Yeah, and all of the different things that you can do with them. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's fun for defensive coordinators as well, and that's why you go recruit those kind of kids. So
I got one
Sure.
more statement I want to make on there. If anybody's looking for us after this, we're going to be at the world's busiest Texas Roadhouse, it appears. But I just think people love the stories from the road. I think they like the color of what it's like doing this. And there's a Texas Roadhouse across the street, and it was hopping.
I think I wonder if there's like 4 wedding receptions going on in there, or if that's just what it's like here in Bloomington. Because if this is what it's like, I can get down with the Texas Roadhouse. The lines coming out of, people can't even park. People are parked on the side of the road. Every single Texas Roadhouse parking lot is gigantic, right? It goes 18 rows deep. Here, they're parking out on the street, and this isn't even off-street parking. This is just they're parking on the road. This place must be, I imagine, Tom and Kevin, the rolls and the butter have to be just stupendous, as all Texas Roadhouses are.
I always like, when we're on the road, to go find the really good local places you can't get at home. And sometimes I'm outvoted 2-1.
I have no. I have never voted to go to a chain place.
If you're watching this not live, go ahead and hit the the J key about 3 times, back up about 45 seconds, and listen to the excitement in Kevin's voice as he says the words, Texas Roadhouse.
I'm excited because they have cold beer there and TVs. So don't sit there and say that I eat bad chain food or okay chain food. Just say that I like beer way too much.
You admit it. You walk out of this hotel and it smells good. You can smell the Texas Roadhouse. Admit it.
I don't know about that, but I know that.
And yes, we're parked to a dumpster. That has nothing to do with it.
That has nothing to do with it. I just know that I do have a celebratory beverage waiting for me, so we should probably send everybody home.
No, more questions?
I think we do have questions.
All right, you're on your own. I'm out of here.
All right. No, that will do it. Thank you, everybody, for the questions. Thank you for the Super Chat contributions. Thank you for just tuning in and being part of this. We always appreciate it. Puts a smile on our faces. Hopefully it does the same for you. So thank you, guys. We will be back tomorrow afternoon-ish for our live preview, somewhere in the vicinity of the stadium. And looking forward to that. And again, we'll take questions. And I don't know what time we're thinking about that. 3, 4?
I would say maybe we try to time it up with the availability report toward the tail end of the show. If we could do that,
Yeah.
I think people will get the most value out of that.
Yeah, that works. And what time is that? I didn't get the email.
I think that was 4:30 is when we're supposed to drop.
All right, so maybe we go on. We'll talk to you tomorrow afternoon, and we'll hit out the tweets and the posts on the message board about when we're going, where we're going, and all of that good stuff. So, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you again for the questions, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.